For over 10 years, Catherine was the other woman to a married man at work. They met regularly for dinner and wine and to sleep together. With him, I felt desired and wanted. Intense feelings. There was a strong attraction between us, and then I started developing feelings for him. Catherine had known the man for over 10 years when she noticed something strange. They were chatting on Snapchat, but that day she realized someone was taking screenshots of their conversation again and again. She barely had time to ask what was going on before it hit her. It had to be his wife. So I deleted my message and waited for him to get in touch. 10 minutes later, I got a message. "We've been found out. I'll contact you when I can." Psychologist says that on-again, off-again relationships, for these couples, it often ends well. That's how Catherine describes it. Between 2012 and 2023, she had an on-and-off relationship with a married man. The affair came to an abrupt end the day his wife discovered their conversation, but the relationship had started just as suddenly. Flirting at work. They met at work when he joined the management team she was already part of. At first, she thought he seemed unserious and a bit annoying. He, however, quickly showed interest in her. After flirting with me for a while, he became very direct and said he wanted to start a relationship. We agreed that he'd come over to my place one evening. We cooked dinner, and it all felt awkward. We both knew what this was really about, but also not quite. That night ended with us sleeping together. From there, the relationship developed further. He has a wife and 2 small kids, but that night we gave in. He was married and had a 2-year-old child. She knew that well. They often met on Sundays, usually just as friends since he'd bring his son. They went to playgrounds or out for ice cream. The relationship also deepened at work, where they'd schedule meetings alone just to spend time together. I knew he was married and had kids, so in the beginning I didn't want him to leave his wife, but the attraction between us was strong. And then I started developing feelings, says Catherine, adding, "He made me feel desired and wanted. With him, I felt beautiful and seen." They began talking more openly about their feelings. He confided in her about his marriage, that it wasn't working, that they no longer had sex, and that he wanted to leave his wife, so it could be him and Catherine. Meeting the family. Catherine invited him to her birthday, a brunch with her whole family present. Her family knew he was married, and at one point, her mother asked what his wife did for a living. I remember him telling my mom that she could ask about her, but not to refer to her as his wife. Even though I understood him, it felt absurd that we could talk about the elephant in the room but not name it, says Catherine, continuing, "Single men share. This is how we want to be approached." Looking back, I think, what on earth was I doing? But I felt like we were in a relationship. We held hands in public and said good morning and good night every day. I felt like I was in a relationship, just one where I only got 80% of him. Time passed, and he kept postponing leaving his wife. Sometimes she got tired of waiting and ended it, but they always got back together shortly after. This continued for 2 years. I felt increasingly stupid. The friends I'd told asked if I really believed he'd leave his wife. I always said yes. I had to lie to myself. I see myself as a reasonably intelligent and reflective person, so why did I let him do this to me and make me sad every time? But it's not black and white. It was about me longing for a relationship and wanting another child. He lost his job. Then Valentine's Day came. He was let go from their workplace, and it became harder to meet. On Valentine's Day in 2014, he wrote that he couldn't leave his wife and didn't want to waste her time. He cut contact. It was the first time he took a step back, and it shifted the power dynamic. Life without him. Catherine went through deep heartbreak and struggled for a long time afterward. She took time to reflect on what she wanted. She deeply wanted another child. Eventually, she chose to have a child via sperm donor and gave birth to a daughter in 2017. After maternity leave, she quit her job and received a 6-month severance package. While figuring out her next step, she started seeing a coach who suggested she reach out to her network for feedback on her strengths as a leader. I have a partner and kids, but I still miss my ex every day. And that's when he popped into my head. I spent some time deciding whether to contact him. Eventually, I did. I wish I could say it was purely professional. But of course, I hoped we could re-establish some sort of connection. I also wanted to understand why he ended things in 2014. He was still married, and he and his wife had moved out of town with their son. But he was often in Copenhagen for work, and they reconnected. We hadn't seen each other in years, and that first meeting was overwhelming. My motivation was clearly to regain some of my confidence. This time, there was never any talk of being together again. His wife was pregnant. With him, I still felt like the most beautiful woman in the city. I needed that validation to start loving my body again after pregnancy and childbirth. My daughter had started daycare, but I still felt disconnected from my body. The thought of dating again gave me anxiety, just the idea of undressing in front of someone. One day, his wife's Facebook profile showed up under People You May Know. In her profile picture, it was clear she was pregnant again. I didn't think it was fair that he put me in that situation. They already had one child. I know another child doesn't necessarily make it better or worse, says Catherine, adding, but it was something about them choosing to have a second child, while he was still sleeping with me in hotel rooms in Copenhagen on the weekends. That felt intense. Still, it didn't end things. She continued receiving the validation she needed. They mainly met on weekends, spending all their time in hotel rooms. On Sunday evenings, she went home and became a mom again. This continued for 5 years, until his wife found out. It took about an hour from the moment he sent the message saying they'd been found out until he called. His wife had found explicit photos of Catherine and him. She had taken screenshots to send them to herself. He said he'd contact me in a few days. I told him I at least needed to know those photos were deleted. He assured me he'd take care of it. I think that's the most awful way she could have found out. She'll never forget those photos. I had so much compassion for her in that moment. Later that day, Catherine received a text. I made a huge mistake. I'm very sorry, but you must never contact me again. They never communicated via text, and it was clear he hadn't written that message. She still believed he'd contact her when he could, but he didn't. Instead, I was blocked everywhere, on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. That's when I truly felt, this is not okay. Women often misread this as a sign he wants more, but that's not always the case. So she contacted him through his work email. She wrote that he needed to talk to her so they could end things properly. If not, she'd go to the police because of the photos she was still concerned about. Half an hour later, he called. They talked. Catherine explained that she needed closure, face-to-face over a cup of coffee. He agreed. They decided he'd contact her when he could. It's been nearly 2 years, and she's accepted that he probably never will. Infidelity isn't black and white. I look back at it all with a lot of compassion. I understand that a woman was hurt, and I understand that infidelity in a relationship is a brutal act. But if the couple can find their way back to each other, it can also bring new energy and renewal to the marriage. I hope they've found each other again, had deep conversations, and now have a marriage that actually works. She knew he was married and could have said no, but she believes it wasn't her responsibility if the spouse was hurt. That responsibility lies with him. I told our boys that Daddy had found someone else. She understands that many believe the other woman shares the blame, but she sees it differently. For her, it's the person who chooses to be unfaithful who holds the primary responsibility.